Hey guys, welcome to the second bonus video on this channel. For this one, you're going to be seeing the panel I did on the Saturday at AuthorCon. It's called Road Dogs. Road Dogs is all about setting up at a convention, setting up a book signing, being on the road, and it was covered by myself and 4 other authors: Gemma Amor, Ronald Malfi, Wayne Comunale, and Wesley Southard, who moderated. We covered a lot of topics, and everyone had their each little piece of advice and methods. We all do things very differently, so it was a very well-rounded conversation. So if you like what you see, make sure to subscribe. Leave a comment down below. What did you think was most valuable? What did you think was the best piece of advice? And I hope you enjoy.
Coming out to the Road Dogs panel. I am Wesley Southard. I am the moderator. I have never moderated a panel in my life, so I'm a little nervous about this, but I think we'll get through it.
You're doing great, dude.
Thank you. I appreciate
really
that,
great
bro.
so far.
I originally suggested to Keen about this panel. I think it would be really informative to other writers and creatives on kind of the do's and don'ts and tips and tricks of shows and book events and traveling to these events and like do's and don'ts of how to do this. And he told me I had to moderate it, so now I got to come up with the questions. So again, I'm Wesley Southard. I guess we'll go down the line and introduce ourselves, and talk about just briefly like how many kind of shows you end up doing maybe a year. So.
I'm John Wayne, if you don't know me. I live in Las Vegas. I also play in a punk rock band. I've done a bunch of shows with Wes here on the road, but I've been doing this professionally we're just touring for about 4 years now. Last year, I think I did 33 weeks on the road. This year, so far, I have 25 that are on my website right now, but it'll probably be upwards of almost close to 40 weeks this year of travel. So, yeah, and that's me.
My name is Joseph Pezzaveno. Last year was actually my first year of doing shows. AuthorCon was my first show. I'm based out of New York, but I've been doing it this is my 10th show. I did 7 last year, and I hope to do a lot more this year.
I'm Ronald Malfi. I'm a writer. I'm also in a band, rock band, so my touring schedule is kind of similar to John's in that I hit a bunch of different cities when a new book comes out, usually 3 months. After a new book comes out, I'll spend like 3 months traveling and marketing, promoting that book and doing signings. And whenever the band tours and plays, I try to do like a signing in that area to kind of double dip. So I've been doing that for, I don't know, seems like a fucking 1,000 years. So.
Don't sound jaded at all.
Yeah, no, not at all. It's fantastic. I love it.
My job.
That's right.
I'm Gemma Amor, and I'm a writer, and kind of dabble with some voice acting and art and bits and pieces as well. And I haven't really done very many events, and primarily because I started writing in 2018. I got some traction in 2019, and then the world died, and I didn't go anywhere because there wasn't anything to do for 2 years. And so last year was a big year for me. I did 3 cons over here and 1 over in the UK, and I'm still learning how it feels and what to do and all the different beats and things and how to prepare, and particularly advise doing a visa correctly before you fly into another country.
Very good. Yeah, I'm from Pennsylvania. I did over the last. I've always been doing shows since I started writing, but like the last 2 years have really jumped up in the number. I mean, I think in 2021 I did 20-something shows, and then last year I think I did 15 all over the country. Not quite as many as John Wayne has done, but yeah, it's jumped exponentially. So I think like my first question I want to ask is like, as far as, do you prefer to do convention type shows? Do you prefer to do like multi-author events like this? Do you prefer like solo bookstore type shows? Like what do you prefer doing personally? What do you seem to get the most traction out of?
So first, I guess like I want to preface this with saying like I just am giving like what works for me. Like this is not like if you do this, like this is how it works. So I'll just like be spouting like a bunch of like, yeah, I've done this and this is how I kind of view it. So I just wanted to like preface like all of that. I personally like one of the things we've talked about, I do not do like pop culture shows. Let's start with doesn't work. Like pop culture shows do not work for me. Like I can't do Comic Cons, I can't do toy shows. For some reason the Venn diagram of like horror author and, you know, punk rock death guy like is not like Naruto like friendly or something. So those are just like, I just stopped doing those completely. Now I do like doing the horror conventions. I'm a whore for them, obviously. But they're like, it's a media-driven thing. It's mostly based around movies, you know, that medium. And we're writing books. I like to go in there and be like, yeah, you're not here to buy a book until you meet us, until you talk to us.
Right.
So that's kind of why I like going in those trenches. And then also, like, I'm sure Malfi, you speak to this, is it all translates to me from touring in bands for so long. It's really easy to kind of like port it over into this. You may play like at the club here for like the other band's girlfriends and the bartender, but when you come back in 6 months, there's a dozen people there. And then when you come back 3 months later, it's kind of full. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I like to go to those places. I like to make connections with people and do it like that. So I guess I really didn't even answer your question, but I do like the horror convention. I mean, of course, I love this stuff. Whenever you're in like an all author like thing, we can all talk about writing. We're all like, you know, we can almost speak the same language. It's very different. Wes can relate. If you're at a horror convention, it's different. They're not just all like going to be writerly people. But I don't know, I like to meet those different people and kind of like put it out there like, yeah, we do this, and put it into the mainstream horror, like whatever, of the people there.
So just a side question. I know we've talked about this personally before, but I want to see what you think now as opposed to like a year ago.
Okay.
I've always worried about selling at horror conventions because I always wonder, are the books that I'm selling actually making a difference? As in, are these books going to become more sales eventually? Am I going to grow my fan base this way, or am I just selling books to people that want to buy something at that moment? Do you ever have that thought? Do you feel like doing these shows, do you see your sales growing outside of the show because of this?
Yeah, dude, we should talk. Like, are you all right? No, that's a fucked up way to look at it. No, it's not. No, I do get what you're saying, but again, just can speak for what works for me. And we've talked about this as building a connection. Like, building a connection with the audience, that's what sustains you. Like, that's why I do the podcast and stuff, because it's like, you talk to us at the table, but then you can listen to the podcast later and you still feel that connection. Like, if I'm gonna have a career selling books and being an art weirdo, like, I need to talk to the people that are into it. So I guess I don't ever look at it like, are you just trying to buy something? Because I'm always like, yeah, this is what you want, right? Like, you know, but I don't know. Yeah, so I think it usually does translate. If you talk numbers, like every time I leave a city, you see like the residuals from that area come up. If that, So I think so. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think a lot of these things are, and I agree with what you're saying, but I think a lot of it is targeted for different reasons. So I have the most fun coming to conventions like this, mainly because I get to see people I'm friends with who I only generally see once or twice a year, so that's awesome. But this serves a singular purpose, really, as far as book sales go, which is selling to people who already are aware of me, who already read my stuff. So I'm just making myself more accessible and getting to know them. But generally, these are book sales that will happen regardless of me being here.
Right.
However, what you don't want to do is you don't want to just pigeonhole yourself to doing that stuff and just marketing to people who already know your stuff, right? I mean, that's like one step away from having just your family buy your crap, right? So you want to go big. So as far as selling books, that's what happens at events like this. When I do individual bookstore signings, Barnes & Nobles, indie bookstores, in different cities where maybe people don't know me, or I'm now getting foot traffic. Maybe some people show up because they know my name, but maybe other people are there just browsing, and I could talk to them. And I'm starting to build a fan base of people who wouldn't ordinarily read my stuff, who are meeting me, finding the books, and building a fan base that way. I do see, like I said, when I have a new book come out, I'll spend 3 months, not 3 months 100% on the road, like a few days out of a week for 3 months, doing different signings at bookstores. And those signings at the stores are okay, but what I do notice is they wind up selling out of the books I leave behind signed, because people then come in and see them, and also just online sales for whatever go up from having, I guess, people just seeing the name enough, you know, so that helps.
Yeah, it's like band 101. Like, you can't just keep selling your record to your friends.
Exactly.
Your friends are going to always support you, or at least they should. But if you're trying to have a career, like, you have to build it beyond that. So,
I don't know if it works differently in the UK, but bookstore events generally over there are a bit, I find them quite hard work. Like, it's much more intimate. You feel a lot more exposed, particularly if nobody turns up. But it's more than that. I think we're quite reserved as a kind of nation, and there's almost a slight, like, not animosity, but there's definitely everyone's kind of like, so impress me. Why should I buy your book? Which is hard to overcome when you're still at the beginning of your like career journey. Events like this for selling books, I don't ever question why somebody's buying a book. If you're buying a book, it's good.
Yeah.
It's a book sold, you know?
Right.
Regardless of what happens at the end, you're selling books. And that has to do something just like for your innate sense of confidence as a writer anyway.
Right.
So these kind of things, specifically author events, which there aren't many of actually, especially in the horror genre,
Yeah.
are brilliant for both things, for networking, for getting your face seen, for selling books, for the whole shebang. And I've been to horror cons, like general conventions, you know, people, cosplay and all the rest of it, and people aren't really interested in books. They want cushions with Jack Nicholson's face on and stuff like that. So I see.
Not until they talk to you.
Right. Yeah.
Once they talk to you, then they're into books. Like, seriously, like that's the way I look at it.
The
like,
ones that I've been to, I haven't really found that. Like, it hasn't been like the willingness to.
Like,
it's weird.
British. Look at me. I'm like, you know. Like,
but then there was the band from the Lost Boys there, and the dude with the saxophone. So I couldn't really.
I have a Jim
I
Capone
couldn't
story.
compete, like.
I don't. It's a bad. I don't want to hijack the panel, but I can tell the story offline afterwards.
Do they have events like this in Britain, like where it's just multi-author? I'm not necessarily talking about like StokerCon or World Fantasy, but I mean like a selling show like this. Like, is there anything
kind of do,
there for you like that?
Don't. Like, again, like most things in the UK, we're quite old-fashioned. So we have industry conventions and things that have been going for like 30 odd years, where the formats stayed the same for a really long time. And there's normally like a set of familiar faces that do the rounds. But there's a growing movement of kind of smaller events, festivals. I mean, there's obviously like the literary greats like Hay on Wye Festival, which is like all the most famous authors in the world. But within the genre, there's not much, but it's improving, and yeah, I hope there'll be a lot more in the future.
That's good. All right, Joseph, what about you?
I feel like the AuthorCon works really well because it's one of the shows where you can kind of blend genres too. Like, horror conventions are great because you can bring your horror books there and you already have that audience, but like here there's people of all different genres bringing a little bit of everything, and on top of that you're having veterans here and new guys here. Like, last year was like half the size, and like this year you're having people who have been writing for decades, and you're also having people like me who've been only writing for like a few years, and even be able to sit on a panel like this with people who've been writing much longer than I have. You know, you get perspective from everyone, and I think that's established downstairs and in all the rooms where, like, you know, you're sitting next to someone who has, you know, 10 more books than you, and they're selling more than you, but they're also sitting right next to you, and you can talk to them and get perspective on all the things that they're doing and how they're selling books and how they're talking to their customers and what's making them more successful. And even next year, you can even do the same thing as the newer guy this year, because there's going to be younger authors coming, and you're going to have a little bit more perspective, and they're going to be newer. So it's great to have all that different variety, which you're not going to get at something like FantasyCon or Monster Mania or Comic-Con. You know, everything's covered here.
Right. Yeah. The opportunity to have conversations like this, whether it's on a panel setting or like out in the lobby or out at the booth, is like invaluable, I think, and just happens at these kind of gatherings. So
I think that's actually the value that I take away from these things beyond book sales is that energy that you soak up is the biggest win for me, because I'm still very new in my writing career. I'm still, you know, got a lot to learn, and what I find is I come away from these things like incredibly energized,
Yeah.
like knackered,
Yeah.
but like really, and then I sit down and everything I write after that in that immediate period afterwards is so much better because
Yeah.
you kind of soak it up.
Your battery gets
Yeah.
recharged.
This is a way to recharge.
creatively, yeah.
Everybody's
Yep.
battery charges differently.
Right.
So,
But we're all
like,
in the same boat as well, which I
but
love.
this is like, so we can find our way to kind of charge that while we're here.
Yeah.
And that's what these events, I guess, lend themselves supposed to.
Yeah,
Am I
for sure.
whispering? I feel like I'm whispering.
You're just naturally loud, though, so this is a
You're
little
right.
weird.
Take it. Okay.
So, do you find it difficult to travel with your books and equipment? And like, what sort of? I mean, this especially for Gemma coming across the sea, coming across the ocean. Like,
I swam.
like you swam. Oh, I'm
the whole
sorry.
way. It
Flapped
was
your arms
real
really
Hard to
tiny.
keep the books dry.
Yeah,
There
I
you go.
had like to tow them behind me. Like,
So, like, what kind of like tips and tricks do you or do you have to like make the whole process easier? Because I know like Gemma had books. I guess you had books shipped to like Keynes,
yeah.
so that was easier for you. But like, what's it like traveling with books?
You put a lot of thought into these questions.
I tried, man. I tried. I'm sorry.
Are you asking her?
I'm at whoever. Go down here.
I'm old school. I drive everywhere. I'm just driving like a crazy ass motherfucker, like band style, like Malfi, like like you're just on the road. I have flown with books before, and Wes, we talked about. I just pack my whole suitcase full of as many books as I can. They will always stop you and look through it because they're like, "What is this?" And so you'll get stopped. But I don't like to fly with stuff. I guess I would say maybe bring a trunk or just ship it if you can. My setup has just gotten way too big to fly, and plus, like, if you're flying everywhere, once I get private jet status, then it's gonna be a party. But for now, I have to drive from like place to place, and I gotta sleep in the gutters, and with the people, and that's what I like.
Joseph.
I also in the same boat. Like I've only gone as far as like the East Coast, maybe like Western Pennsylvania, for the sole fact that traveling farther is going to be another added expense. Like having that plane ticket, as opposed to gas money, is going to throw off your sales. Number one, number two, it's like, what if your luggage gets lost, and then you run that risk of ruining your show. So I think like just driving or like going within your means or a place you're comfortable with, a place that that you'll have some success at is really going to be beneficial. But I also have like a little bit of a setup. I have a backdrop and some displays. But I think that also it's worth it because when you go to a bigger show, people are going to be drawn to that, and I think it's worth it. And just keeping within your means until you're in a position where you can travel further and go places is fine. But I think everyone's just trying to get to that level of going a little bit further.
I kind of go bare minimum with book stuff. I get so tired of lugging band gear around when we're doing that stuff that when I do stuff like this, I kind of look at it as a reprieve.
Yeah, it's easier, right? I'm like, I'm done.
So if you go in that room and you look around, I guarantee you I'm the only author in there without any banners, without any flyer. Like I was excited. I walked in. I had one little wire stand to set a book on. Oh, that's nice. Okay, I'm moving up in the world. Everybody else got it. It looks great in there, and I walk in. I'm like, oh, okay. Maybe I should up my game a little. But I'm very lazy. So, kind of to add to that is I do these things. I look at what's convenient for me, and then I look at what the benefit of those events would be. 99% of the time I'm driving myself, and I prefer to do that. Occasionally, if someone's going to pay to put me on a plane and fly me somewhere, I'll do that, but then they got to handle everything. They've got to get the books there. I'm not bringing any of that stuff, and I've kind of learned, I've been doing this for like 20 years, so I've kind of learned what is a fair demand to make on certain events. I used to do a bunch of I love doing things at libraries. People show up, they're interested, they don't have to be there. It's not like a school where kids are like forced to listen to you. You could talk about books, people there love books, and these library events are cool. What I've learned is, if the library does not promote it, you show up and you may drive 3 hours to go to this event, and there's one person there. Mm-hmm. So I've learned that even though it's a library, I know they have county funding, and I said, look, I'll do it, I'll sell books, and I'll do a talk, but if no one shows up, I need a guarantee, and you got to pay me. and that's what I've learned to do. Again, similar to
It's
the band
it's the
mentality.
Band thing. Yeah, it's like, I'm not 17, I don't pay to play anymore.
Yep,
You know, you gotta
exactly.
figure those kind of things out.
Yeah.
But it just translates like when you're used to it anyway, yeah. But yeah, that's good.
I mean, I had a choice between clothes and underwear or books, so I bought books.
Thank you. Thank you
Yeah,
for your service.
it's logistically a lot. I'm sorry, I can't be serious for any length of time. Sorry. It's logistically a lot more difficult when you come across the seas, but it's arguably kind of worth it, like more worth it, because I don't know, you feel like you've been on a mission and you've achieved the mission goals when you turn up with all your books and then you sell them. So yeah,
It's like you're a
that's not very
diplomat.
helpful.
It's like you're
answer.
representative of your country. Like you're here.
I
like
hope I'm doing a good job. I wore a suit.
I thought you were from
Like,
Missouri.
Was I? The accent, right? Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
What country?
I'm actually not British.
You're British.
I'm fake.
I had no idea.
So do you guys have any particular tips and tricks for actually setting up at the show, as far as like, do you have ways of setting up things on your table that you feel like, I
Did
don't
you
know,
hear
gets
me? I
more
have that
attention?
wire stand
The
that I can
one
put.
wire
These
stand.
are. I don't know if anybody's ever seen these. They're like this, and it keeps the book upright.
There you go.
It's amazing.
There are definitely things that you can, that
Yeah.
make it a lot easier. A massive one is a card reader for taking credit cards.
Yeah.
Like that's doubled my sales easily because everyone pays in card. And they're like, the one I have is like probably $30, and it's an app on your phone, and it's done. So I can recommend like figuring out before you set up what you're going to charge for things. Don't wait until you're there and you're confronted with somebody who wants to buy something. Just figure out what you want them to spend on it first and write it down. That helps me, particularly if I have to convert it into pounds and stuff. Label everything up beforehand, I tend to do, so that you know what's going where on your table. It's just like basic practical shit. Have loads of pens. Bring all the pens, because they will run out, and you'll be in the middle of signing something, and you'll be like, shit. And
If
it'll
you
just
run
fluster
out,
you.
she's got a lot.
No,
So
well,
you can just take.
I hear Brian Keene's
I
got
know,
a lot. And Sharpies are, they're kind of the industry gold standard because they just write so nicely, and they write on any kind of surface. Is this helpful?
Yeah, that's
Have
perfect.
change to make change. Like
Have
you don't want the
change,
first person to
yeah.
roll up with like a 50, and you're like,
Yeah.
I got mints.
No, I was also
Yeah.
going to say, like, in regards to, like, you're talking about having, like, your square and all that stuff,
Yeah.
big advice, like, don't, make it easy for anybody that wants to give you their money.
Right,
Give them,
Yeah.
give you their money.
Don't put
Get a
barriers on.
Venmo, get a
Yeah.
PayPal, get a Cash App, get all that
Yeah.
shit, and just, like, because all you have to do is pull out a QR code, and they can scan it, and, like, that's it. Whatever's easy. Like, once you get people being like, oh, is there an ATM, or I have to go find this, or
Right.
then
You've lost it then.
it's gone.
Because they won't come back.
Yeah, so
Right.
so just like
Yeah.
that's one thing. You're just talking about payment. Like
Um,
let people give you their money if they want to.
Yeah.
So
Freebies help as well, like book plate stickers, bookmarks, business cards with all your deets on, so
those
they can
like
follow you on
Wes, they'll be
socials.
behind the.
What's that?
You give those freebies behind the.
Not that kind of freebie.
Yes.
But like business cards as well, so that once they've met you, they can follow you online and support you over there. And then if they buy something, then they can tweet you and tag you, and it's all just like a self-fulfilling machine of promotion, which sounds really cynical, but it works. Like you need it. So.
Joseph?
I'm a big fan of the digital business cards. There's a lot of brands that do them now. There's Dot, there's Popple, there's a handful of them. But I like them because you can put a ton of links on it, which on a traditional business card you might run out of space. So when they put their phone to it and 10 links come up, they're going to check out your social media. They're going to check out if you're on YouTube. They're going to check out where to get your books signed. So you're going to get a little bit more interaction from the audience, and you're also going to save space, and you get to save time printing all the business cards. And then the other thing I like to do is any sort of like prop that might enhance the book you're selling. Like I have a zombie book, and I have a zombie mask, and people just like to poke dead things. So having that
Don't
there,
bring
like
a corpse.
it's
That's
cool.
too much.
I mean, you can bring a corpse or some hand.
Well,
but-
customs looks at you funny.
But yeah, you might have trouble flying, so I wouldn't recommend that for Gemma.
Yeah, I had a bad enough experience at JFK without like lugging a dead guy over my shoulder.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, have a corpse drop
Buy them
shipped here.
fresh.
Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's at the hotel. It's easier, probably.
Yeah, I'm definitely a swag slut. Like I have stickers and
Wow.
bookmarks and magnets and all kinds of shit that I'm giving away usually with every sale and koozies and stuff like that. But yeah, definitely whichever one of you said about change, like always bring enough change. Like I have my change pocket here. I always have way too many ones and way too many fives because I get a ton of 20s handed to me all the time and it's just handing out fives back all the time. And I've seen plenty of people just bring like, oh, I brought like $50 in change. I'm like, you're an idiot. Like, bring more change. But yeah, change is the big one. But
Also, if you can make things to be like, well, it's just $20. Like, if you make,
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
can like work like your price, like what people have to give you, where you're not gonna have to make so much change. That's another way to kind of like.
So all my books are $21.63. I'm adamant that that's the
I
cost.
actually really believe that.
Is that you breaking all those pennies that I keep?
That it
getting?
is.
Like,
I got like one of those little belts with
Yeah.
the. I just want to make it very difficult for people to read.
Another thing I find quite helpful, and it's kind of like a weird psychological thing, but if you don't have that many books on your table, it has a really different effect to if you have a ton. I don't know why, but people buy more when there's more on your table. Don't ask me to explain it. But if you've only got a couple, it just kind of doesn't have the same appeal as if you've got a big old stack.
It's true.
Size matters.
It's like the service industry thing. Like a full pastry case sells like pastries or whatever. Like, I don't know. I thought I had something.
It's still there, it just needs to germinate. Right?
yeah. So Malfi was mentioning like library events and stuff. So how do you guys go about setting up book signings outside of a scheduled event like a convention or like a show like this? Like what's the best way to go about doing things like that?
There's a couple of different ones. Like I said, I've been doing this for like 20 years, so a lot of those library events, Fright Reads, I think that you did last year. Stuff like that.
Yeah.
They contact me, so I kind of pick and choose from that, but that's from 20 years of doing that. So I know it's not beneficial for you, Wes.
Right.
But some of the other events, depending on your like my publisher has a marketing department that will reach out to bookstores on my behalf. If they don't, and if I happen to develop a relationship with the managers at certain bookstores, I'll do it myself. I'll just call them up and say, hey, got a new book coming out. Here's the dates I'm looking at if you want to have me out, and we go that way.
So who exactly are you contacting at these types of bookstores? Like, are you looking for a specific person, or are you looking to like just say, hey, I need to speak to the general manager?
Yeah, if you don't know anyone there, then you'd ask to speak to a manager. And
Okay.
You tell them you're an author. And Barnes & Noble, I think, are generally like, each one has a manager who will schedule this for you. Their emails are all basically the same. It's like BN with their store number, so you kind of get, you kind of figure out who they are, like
Right.
even on their website. And I've done enough of those at the same kind of spots where I become kind of friendly with the guys, so they know to have me out
Right.
and do that. One of the things I've done with the last two books that was huge, it were stock signings. I don't know if you guys are done those or familiar with it, but it's basically, we all know what a book signing is. You sit there for like 4 hours, sign books in one store, people come in. Stock signing is whenever a book is released, all these bookstores get copies to put on the shelf. I hit about 8 or 9 in a day and sign everything that they have, and they know I'm coming. Like, I'll have either my marketing person, or if I know them, I'll send them an email. And in that day, I'm signing all the books they have in stock. And normally what they do is if you give them enough advance, they'll order a ton more. So you're basically doing, instead of sitting there on your butt for 4 hours in one bookstore signing books, you're signing, 30, 40 books in 9 bookstores in a day.
Okay.
And once you sign them, they basically keep them. Those are sales. They don't send them back. So it's a little secret on that.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the best thing that you can, it's just good business anyway, is just get to know all your local bookshops, all your indies. Big chain ones are a bit more inaccessible because they have certain ways of buying things. I wish we had Barnes & Noble in the UK, because we don't, and it sucks, because they're so ready and open to buy books from all different types of authors. But if you don't feel confident walking into one of the bigger retailer stores, the independent bookshops are normally run by genuine book enthusiasts who are very friendly and very open, and if they're not, you don't want to be there anyway. And just develop that relationship. It's the best marketing you can do for yourself, and then over time it's much easier to go in and say, hey, I've got a new book coming out, can I do an event here? It's worth gold, those personal relationships, I think. There's quite a few booksellers here today as well. It was worth mentioning. It's keeping an eye out for them.
Well, what's your experience been with like your local bookshops?
Yeah, so for background for me, I come from like a self-published background, and then I moved into kind of indie presses, and then I did my first traditional novel, which came out last year. So that's like in all the bookstores, right? That was my first one in bookshops. And it was a uniquely depressing experience, like walking around my city and going into bookshops and not finding my book in any of the major retailers. And then I started to hit the indies, and I remember walking into several of the kind of local booksellers, and the book was there on all the shelves. And it was like, I nearly sank to my knees and like sobbed, thank you, you know. But it's really lovely and it's really gratifying, and that's what I mean, like those smaller bookshops, they're much more kind of, I find they're a lot more in tune with like what's new, what's upcoming. Genre fiction as well isn't like looked down on perhaps quite as much. And it's generally been a really positive experience, like versus going into one of the bigger stores and having the lady look down her nose at you, and you sort of go, hi, I'm an author, and she's like, they all say that, you know. So yeah, it's just like, it's not easy to go and push yourself out there and like shill yourself to book people. But it's worthwhile if you can get comfortable with doing it. So,
Joseph, have you had any experience with that yet?
I haven't done specifically local bookstores. The one thing I was able to benefit from last AuthorCon was certain authors who live in my area put me on to smaller charity events, like one-day events. And through that one, I met another author, and I was invited to another show, and so on and so forth. So having the ability to just network and then get on like a charity show is great, because you know it benefits not only the authors, but it benefits the community that they're helping. And there's a certain organization that does New Jersey and Pennsylvania, but they also do like one-day shows. So the one-day shows are great because you don't have the expense of the hotel. You usually just go set up and then sell for the day. And usually just make your money back for the table, but you also get to meet all the same people you meet at a horror convention without all the added stress of travel. And I think those are beneficial. I don't know if you guys have ever done them, but they're great.
I know you've set up recently some different shows, like in Vegas where you live now. What's that experience been like?
Well, I mean, I do a lot of these, like, there's a ton of horror markets, those one-off, like, pop-up markets that are off on the West Coast that I do a lot. But I was going to say, like, what we were talking about, setting up events that are off, kind of, like, even those, like, are still ones that you kind of, like, sign up for and, like, that kind of thing, or they know you, and then they're like, okay, come out to this, right? Yeah. But, like, again, I got to go back to, like, again, it's like the touring, it's the band thing where you're, like, you got to figure out the shows for yourself. You got to make the events for yourself. Like you were saying, you met people, that other authors. You got to go home to your community and be like, okay, now I know some people. Let's do something. Like there's always a bar, there's always a brewery that wants to do like some fucking event on like a Tuesday night, and you just come have your buddies. You do a reading night or set up like, hey, I'm an author. I have a book out. Like you have to make those events sometimes. Like and it's great, like you said, like meeting people, get to know the people in your community. There's more people than you know that are probably into what you're into, and you can network with those people and put together, like there's a lot of people we know that do all these like brewery things on the East Coast. So, like you just kind of have to go out there and make it happen sometimes. If you're just like gonna be like, well, maybe they'll call me and it'll be great. No, go out and make it happen yourself. Yeah. You've got the shit, you've got the thing. No one's gonna champion you but yourself.
They apologize. They're like, I'm really sorry, I'm really nervous to meet you, I'm really shy to. And I'm like, It's okay. And then they apologize for apologizing. So like, the reason I bring that up is because you don't need to apologize for going up to someone and talking to them about something you're interested in, something that interests you. It's cool, right? Authors love it, and booksellers genuinely will love it as well. So if you want to go into a bookstore and kind of introduce yourself, you don't need to feel apologetic. And I think sometimes we all feel like that, and it holds us back. It kind of gives off a bit of an aura of, and I get it, like I'm socially awkward. I pretend I'm not. I'm doing a really good job of pretending I'm not, but I'm very shy. And it's all well and good to say, right, you need to go out and make it happen for yourself. But if you are actually really socially shy, it's much easier said than done. But one of the best things you can do, if that is a problem, is go in with the mindset that you're not doing anything wrong. You're doing something really cool, and you don't apologize when you go in. I know it sounds like really obvious advice, but it just really, I've noticed it at these events, and we're all in this together. Like I said, we're all just here doing the same thing.
Right.
No, and you put it well, and I like easier said than done. Like it's not, everybody doesn't vibrate on these like super extrovert frequencies. Like I get that, but you're right. Like if everybody could do this, they would. So don't apologize. Like I'm an author. My name is so and so. This is what you do.
Yeah.
It's what you do.
Yeah.
Like if everybody else did it, they would fucking be able to say that easily. This is what we do. So.
And it's cool.
Yeah, just have that confidence. Like not everyone can walk in and be like,
Yeah.
I write books. I'm an author.
Yeah.
You know. So easier said than done. That was very well put. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
Sorry, I come off like all screaming
No,
and
not
stuff.
at all.
I know there's several of us like talking about scheduling like events outside of the stuff. Like there were several of us in the central Pennsylvania area that set up our own mass author event last November at a brewery that one of our friends works at that's an author, and we ended up having like an old school scholastic book fair where we set up all of our books across all these tables, and then all the authors just went and fucked off to the corner. You know, we all got lunch and ate and drank and whatever, and people would just come in and browse and buy what they wanted. They knew that we were over there. If they wanted to get it signed, they could come find us and get it signed. We all had name badges. If they didn't, they just went and paid and they left.
Did they not find that intimidating?
No, and the thing is, like, it was crazy that everybody sold a ton because we weren't standing behind the tables talking to them. You know, they didn't. The people didn't feel that pressure of
It was
having
less
to.
intimidating.
What's that?
There's so many schools of
Less
thought on this.
intimidating.
Yeah, it was less intimidating for people when they were coming in, but like everybody did so well at that show, and that's a kind of a thing that people can do is befriend. I don't know. I've seen a lot of people on the East Coast do these like brewery tours and stuff, and I don't know how well they work for them, but that kind of show worked for us really well. And I'm starting to see more like of these like book fair kind of things, like adult book fairs popping up across the country, and it seems like everybody's been having a lot of success doing those.
Right, but if that's working, like that's awesome. You found something that works for you guys at these events. Like that's how you grow it. That's how it happens.
Right.
So you know.
So we're talking about all this travel and the money being spent at these shows. What are some good ways of saving money while on the road? Because this stuff is so expensive, and traveling and flying is outrageous these days, and food and everything really adds up, especially when you're saving all your receipts for your taxes and stuff. Personally, I've been asking for airline gift cards for Christmas every year for the last few years because that helps cut the cost of air travel so much. And every time I tell other authors that, they're like, oh yeah, that's actually a really good idea, because I prefer to fly personally. Like I know everybody likes to drive, but I prefer to fly. I just think it's a lot easier for me. But like, what are some good ways that you guys find that saves you money while you're on the road?
I think not being too picky with where you eat.
Okay.
If you can save a buck with where you eat, you don't need to spend on like a really nice restaurant. I usually travel with a friend, and sometimes they'll chip in for food, or we'll just get something really cheap. Usually if it's a guy friend, they'll eat almost out of a trash can just to save money. So if you're planning on going with someone who likes eating well, don't bring them. And if you don't mind, like, there's a difference between a cheap hotel and then like a flea bag hotel. So if you can stay somewhere that's cheaper and you don't really mind just crashing and then going doing your thing, as opposed to like you're going to get a disease if you sleep there, do that, because a lot of the places where these conventions are in towns that have like 19 hotels. So like you'll find a place, and if you book way in advance, you can get cheaper rates. And a lot of these places you can book in advance and pay when you get there. So like if your show's like 6 months away, you can save for it. So you do have those options, and that's really it. And if you're going to like a horror convention or something like that, try not to buy as much, because those add up. You know, Robert Englund charges a lot for a signature, so don't get it when you're selling at that show.
I wasn't looking at you disapprovingly. I was just thinking.
I tend to, if I do other conventions or stuff like that, like I think I'm thinking of the right one, Creature Feature maybe? Is that like
The one at Gettysburg?
Yeah.
Is that Gettysburg?
Yeah, the one we did, yeah.
Okay. Well, one of them, I think it might have been that one.
There's two of them, right?
I thought this was like Southern Virginia somewhere, but I don't know.
Oh, yeah, I don't
Well, anyway, they kind of blur together after a while. But like if I go in for one of those and the hotel room is not part of the package, that like I have to get my own room, I'll get a room, do the event that day, but also have planned to do like a Barnes & Noble signing the following day, because there's one up the road. I'll set that up and I'll do 2 for 1. So I'm staying one night, one first day of convention, sleep over, next day bookstore signing, and I drive home. So I try to maximize that. Again, very similar to the band. You know, if you're going through a city, you hit the venues where you can to pay for your gas. So
Yeah.
it's kind of a similar
Put
thought
the
with that.
pieces together as you're going,
Mhm.
like pick up like when I do like all the horror conventions, like when I played a Chicago show like a couple months ago, I picked up a band gig right
Right.
off the, you gotta like kind of fill the gaps in. But me, I will sleep in the flea bag, like I will sleep in my car. I will do all of those things. I will eat floor pizza. You have to like, if there's free food anywhere, this is one of the sayings that I have. You may not be hungry now, but you'll be hungry later. So take that free food. Like, don't ever be like, no, I'm sorry, I'm not hungry. Yeah, bitch, you're gonna be hungry later. Like, it's just kind of like what you want out of it. Touring life is hard. The way I do it is like just hardcore. Like I like that we all like very different, like how we're all doing this. But I'm like the most like where I slept in a halfway house. Like I don't give a fuck. Like I got to get to the next place, So you just got to make all of the money make all the sense all the time.
Right.
But always bring food with you. Bring shit with you. Don't be like, I'll buy it when I'm out there. No, you ain't gonna buy shit, dude. Bring it all with you. Bring everything you can. Take everything you can too. Don't ever pay for parking. Steal parking if you can.
I
Gem-
guess
yeah.
I have a slightly different perspective. When you're a kind of lone female traveler, you don't maybe feel as comfortable
Well, it's completely
with
different.
the less like. I've been, and don't get me wrong, I've slept in some shitholes, and I never felt very safe. So I think primarily for me, safety first, comfort second, because these things are exhausting. So what I'm saying is that I know it's going to be expensive, and I kind of write it off as a business cost,
Right.
and I save for it. And there's only so much you can do. Like, yeah, with the food, definitely, like bring your own if you're able to. But beyond that, I just kind of suck up the cost. And like, if I'm at a con, I'm safe, I'm happy, I've slept okay, like, then I'm gonna have a better experience. And I think maybe that's just the kind of scared female in me as a, somebody that does. I've done a few of these now, and yeah.
Yeah, I can relate. I did a show in Pittsburgh last year, and I want to feel safe where I'm staying at too.
Yeah.
I went to a show in Pittsburgh and went to the crappy hotel that they had there because it was the cheapest. And when I got there, I was unloading my car, and a guy tried to pick a fight with me in
Right.
the parking lot
Yeah.
for absolutely no reason. So I packed up my stuff. I told the manager there, I said, I want my money back. I'm out of here. And I went to a nicer place up the street because I did not want to feel uncomfortable the entire time.
Did you have it coming though a little bit? You think?
No,
No, okay.
no, I did not.
No, I'm just, yeah, no, that's yeah. Just,
I think it's important to note that you can't think of all these events as one-offs. Like, you can't come to this and say, it's costing me this much this weekend. Will I make this money back this weekend?
Right,
especially if you're newer in your career and you're just kind of this is all an investment in your writing career.
Right.
Yeah.
All these things add up. You may lose some money on some events, you may make some money on some other events. You're building a fan base, you're getting your books out there, people are starting to recognize your name. That's the bigger picture. So years down the road, everything, you keep at it, you'll see more reward for the work you're doing. So.
And you have a lot of fun as well, and there's a lot of like just intrinsic value in that. So I think I get it. You do need to save money. These things are expensive. They're not the cheapest, but if you can just save up and recognize that you're going to have to shell out and then just relax and go with it, that's kind of what I do.
Yeah.
I have to echo what you said also about writing stuff off as expenses, like as your traveling expenses. Save
Get
your
all
receipts.
your receipts for
Save
everything.
every receipt,
Yeah.
gas, food, everything, because it matters at the end of the year when you're doing your taxes, and that's how I make money every year during taxes, because of every fucking receipt that I have to save, and it's exhaustive, but it makes a difference at the end of the year. So, Joseph, do you have any?
I think just to add on what you were saying, it's like it's like an investment in your writing career, and you really don't know how the show's going to turn out. Like the smaller show, you'll make a little bit more, or the bigger show, you'll make a little less. And I've been to shows where like nothing for like the first day and a half, and then I'll sell out of one book. So I think just keep pushing on, and like if you did a show last year and it was expensive and it really wasn't worth it, don't do that show again. But if you do one and you did pretty well, like next year you'll probably do a little bit better. So you really just have to like experience it and then weigh your options and see how you do. Every show's not going to be beneficial.
That's very true. I've done some clunkers. I've done some bad clunkers. I did a show in Baltimore last year that was supposed to be a Saturday-Sunday event. I was there for 9 hours on Saturday and sold one book and I just left after Saturday. Didn't come back. That's the price you pay for these things.
Sometimes it's like that. It's incremental. It's like learning an instrument. Like every day you have to practice, and you're not going to have like some blisteringly great practice every day, but you build it. You're building this career. Like I said earlier, like the bartenders and their girlfriends are there to see you. 6 months you come back, there's 12 people there. It's all incremental. So it is an investment in what you're doing. So you can't look at it like oh, this was a loss or this sucked. No, man, you met a bunch of people. You're not punching a clock today. You're here doing your fucking thing and talking to people. And those people will be the people that support you later when you're at the next show and the next show and the next show. So, yeah.
It's also worth mentioning that many of these things have a virtual version. So if you are strapped for cash and you still want to get in on it, then things like StokerCon have like an online version of the con, which is also really worthwhile. You can, sometimes the panels are streamed, there's transcripts and stuff like that. So it's always, if you're on a super budget, like, that's always good.
Okay. Well, I mean, we do these events to meet readers, to engage with our fans, and to grow our readership. So, what do you do to engage potential readers? Not necessarily people that are there to see you in particular, but the ones that are just passing by, or the ones that are curious and just kind of come up and go, it's nice to meet you. Like, what do you recommend? Like, how do you engage these potential readers and make the sales and help grow your fan base?
I genuinely, again, I know this is not perhaps the right answer, but I genuinely don't come to a con like that, and I know, and I don't mean that to be tricky. Like, I just find that if I'm stood there and I'm sales pitchy, it like reeks of like, come buy my books, and people like veer away. I just hang out, wear a nice suit, maybe have a drink, try and relax and have fun, and that's enough. Like, and I think that vibe makes it easy for people to approach you anyway. And I think the more formal you make something, more intimidating it is perhaps for other people who might want to come over and talk to you for a bit like, whoa, okay. That would be my biggest like thing that I've learned, because I did start out these things very like, hi, and it was just like, yeah. So now I don't really try and engage. I let people engage with me when they're comfortable, and then when they come over, I'm like, hi, how are you? Because we're all human beings, and interacting with other human beings is hard work. It's tricky.
It takes a long time to learn. Like I've always used to be a very shy person. I
Right.
feel like I've broken out of that quite a bit over the last several years because I've had to do these shows and because I've had to engage with other writers and readers. And yeah, it's difficult, but it's something that I think just comes over time. And hopefully, you kind of break out of the habit of being in a shell while you're speaking to people. And yeah, it's speaking to people and not as a transaction.
Or like not a potential sale.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, are you here to buy anything? If not,
Right.
I'm not interested.
Right,
You
right.
just- yeah.
I think you kind of know the different personalities that are coming to a lot of these shows, particularly like horror events. There's always people who are like a little bit socially awkward who like come up and talk to you and then they leave. And then there's people who are coming to buy your books because they're already walking with a handful of books. And then there's people who are just kind of browsing for the sake of browsing. But I think the main thing for all of those people is if they give you eye contact or they come up to your table, just have a conversation with them. Like, are you enjoying the show? Like, why did you come here? Or like, did you come for a particular guest or particular reason? And just having that conversation will either lead to just a friendly conversation or a potential sale. But like, I've had people, and I think a few of you can relate, like, oh, tell me about your books. And you tell them about your books, and they're like, all right, great, thanks, and they walk away. And I usually just say, like, enjoy the convention, or like, are you enjoying the convention? And I think people resonate with that, and it's even benefited me where they'll come back later and like, oh, I want to check out your book. So just having a very neutral conversation helps, but you can kind of learn to feed off the energy that you're getting if they're going to, depending on how they respond to your books and everything you have in your table, if that'll be a sale or not.
Malfi?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty, I guess I'm an introvert by preference, but I could be fairly outgoing, and I'm comfortable doing that. And I'm kind of good at reading people too. So when I see people come by, I know kind of how to engage and what to do. I like kind of, taking a different approach, where, the little old lady comes with her cart and is looking at your books. I always like, I don't be like, oh, would you like to read a book? I'm always like, get out of here. This is too scary for you, lady. And she's like, oh, are they? Oh, I can read a lot of this. And then she starts reading them, and then we start talking, So you just kind of play it out. I remember doing a book signing years ago at one of the bookstores that was in a mall, so the front entrance was like the mall hallway. People were walking by, and the table was right there, so you could even talk to people who aren't in the bookstore yet. And people were just walking up and down. I must have challenged like 1,000 people that day to arm wrestling. I'm like, if I beat you arm wrestling, you gotta buy my book. I just was calling it. So people would come over. There was like a line of people to arm wrestle. I was doing kids. I was beating their. I'm like, all right, your parents, get money from your parents. You gotta buy this book now.
That's actually really awesome.
It was engaging, and it was like people were like laughing, and then they'd go, and then come back with their friends. Like, all right, my friend's gonna do it. I'm like, all right, well, he's a big dude. That means you got to buy 2 books, so we'll do it that way. It was great, But
There's a lot to be said for humor and just like having fun with it.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean that's the thing. You
Yeah.
don't want to come off like you're
Yeah.
selling car tires. You want to have fun with it.
Yeah.
So I'm hyper aware of how I may come off. Like, I'm very big and huge and all of this. But the main thing that I can impart to you when you're doing this is to be genuine. I am what you see is what you get. There is no pretension here. And I understand like the whole like it's easier said than done to be extroverted. Yes, it is. Not everyone can do that, but what you can do is be yourself and have a conversation with someone who comes up. You don't have to like Wes has tabled with me before, and it's fun. I just want you to have fun. You don't have to fucking buy anything. Let's talk. Let's have a beer. Hey, how you doing? Everyone that comes by, how you doing? What's up? How you doing? Like, yes, and you read the people, and you're not like whatever, and maybe you get some old lady's numbers from Alfie, and that's fine too. But like,
That's how they buy you food. That's how you eat.
because you're gonna be hungry later. But I just can't I can't impart this enough, strongly enough. Not everyone has to be like this. Just be genuine. It's the connection of a genuine connection with somebody that is going to endear them to what you're doing. It's gonna make them actually interested in what you're doing and invest in what you're doing because you took the time to actually connect with those people. So like, not everyone can be loud and crazy, and you don't have to, but we can all be ourselves when we talk to the people at the tables, so.
If I can add to that as well, that ties in really well with just in general, like who you are as a writer. If you're pushing yourself out there in any form, like on social media, often people will say like, well, kind of with social media and public events, like, how do I do this? What kind of persona? And I always say, you don't need a persona. Have a think about all the reasons why the people closest to you in your life love you, right? Your friends. What is the thing about you that they love the most? And just be that. Just lean into that, because that's like most likely the most genuine version of yourself. And if you can do that at events, and if you can do that on social and online, it will take you a long way, because that's kind of who you are. And I hate the word brand, but that personal brand is what sells. And again, also moving away from this notion of everything as a sale. Like, it isn't. Life isn't this big sale. It's just a series of connections and meetings with people. But if you can be sure of who you are and comfortable with that a little bit, then it goes a long way. So.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that?
Yeah. I was actually going to open it up. That's about all the questions I had. I want to open it up to to people out here. So yeah.
Just from the panel, which of you are introverts and which of you are extroverts?
I'm introverted, deeply introverted.
I prefer to be introverted, but I can do it both ways. I prefer to be left alone.
I'm in this like weird butterfly cocoon thing where like I'm trying to be more extroverted, but I think on a daily basis, all next week I'll probably just be really quiet. My wife's gonna ask me every day like, what's wrong? Like, I just talked all weekend.
The burnout after these things is intense for me.
Sorry, I'm extroverted, but I do like to talk. I like to talk to people too. So like, and I was a theater kid, and all that kind of stuff like lends itself to it. But I don't know. I just like to talk to people, so that helps.
I think I'm a little bit of both, but I think I prefer to be extroverted because I don't like being stuck at home. Even though I'm a writer and I got to be at home and I write and stuff, like I don't want to be stuck at home all the time. I want to be kind of out, see my friends, and do things like that. So yeah, I think the older I get, the more I feel extroverted, I guess. Anybody else have any questions, or Scarlett?
Yes.
Thank you. Let me add, besides John Wayne, for everyone else on the panel, like, I don't know if you have partners or spouses or if you're dating, how does that work for your partner when you guys are on the road?
It doesn't get a choice now.
Only because, like, I know sometimes they can come, sometimes they can't, situations are different,
really good
so
question.
how does that affect?
So for me personally, I have a little boy, he's 9, so he's either in school or he's not that, he's kind of a good traveler, but I think he's probably still a bit too young to like drag across the ocean to like come to these kind of things. I don't think it'll be long. I also view it as a really welcome break for my family, and I mean that in the nicest possible way. But like, I want to do grown-up shit for a while. Like I do the mum-wife thing all the rest of my days, and so I think it's just an accepted thing. This is part of my job. I'm a full-time writer. This is part of the deal. This is how I continue writing books and selling books. So we just juggle it like any kind of working couple does. Like, you have to. So.
Yeah, I try to keep like the long, like this 3-day weekend I'm doing here. I keep it to a minimum. I'll pick and choose the events throughout the year. Make sure they don't interrupt with dance recitals, and I got 2 kids and a wife, and and all the stuff that the family's involved in. And then the other things are generally one-offs. I put the burden on myself. Like, if it's at night and nobody has to, nobody's visiting me, I could do it that way. If it's on a weekend where the kids got something else going on, my wife's with them, I could dip out and do my thing. I think probably tougher for my family is not when I'm traveling, but when I'm writing. It takes me generally about 4 months to write a novel, and for that period of time, I am awful.
And nobody else exists, right, as well?
I walk around the house, I don't shower for a couple of days, I just kind of like look at the wall, I write shit all over the house, and my wife's like, stop fucking doing this, she gets all these notes. I am terrible, I am. And I'm always like, I'll come out of nowhere and be like, hey, what if this happened? She's like, what are you talking about? Like, well,
When you're so deep in it, right? And you have to be deep in it to like keep the flow going.
Yeah.
It's really hard to then drag yourself out and then engage with other people and just go into mum mode.
Yeah.
Or like I feel that.
And you're just not there. I mean, you're there
Your brain is
physically.
somewhere else,
And even, but I'll write for hours at a time for days, you know, and it's like, you know, the kids want to ride their bikes and do this, so I got to like, all right, I got to take a break now and force myself.
There's another panel, isn't there, about being like spouses and horror writers and stuff, and I feel like that, like at this con.
Well, okay, you know what? Do you know the story
Did
behind
you
that?
miss it?
That was fake.
Oh, really?
That-
Oh, wow.
I
okay.
learned that today. That spouses of horror writers panel was
Okay.
how Jan's wife got to show up to see him get the award.
Right.
That was all a ruse to get
okay.
Jan's wife
That
here.
makes sense.
I get you. Okay. It would have been a cool panel though, because it's actually like
Yeah.
it's like a real consideration. Is like when you're in a creative career and perhaps your other partner isn't. Like
You don't want to bring your spouse to this. Come on.
You know, but it's a thing. Like book writing in particular is a very intense like
Well,
thing.
the
so-
traveling too, right?
Yeah.
If you're gonna do a long stretch, how does that affect your partner? And I'm not gonna get into like.
He's
how does it
probably really
affect your-
happy to get rid of me. Like I'm a giant pain in the arse.
So there's no codependence.
So he's just like slams the door, off you go.
What I do, I'm sorry, just like
I
to
said you were
I know, but
allowed
just
to
to like, so
answer.
people, because not everyone may know, like, I'm also on the road constantly, and Scarlett does travel with me a lot. She's my girlfriend and my manager. So it's like a lot of like how we balance that, because we'll just go from place to place to place, and it does take a toll. But you have to have someone, like, I'm also the worst person to ask about this shit. I'm twice divorced. Like, I will blow my life up for my career. I don't give a fuck. Like, I'll break up with all of you right now. Like, if it means I have to get to the next city, like, sorry. Like, that's also kind of what it takes.
But a lot, like, you have families, you have
Yeah.
children.
Oh, I have no
You have
one.
other
Yeah.
people
I have
you
no one.
have to care about.
Nothing to
How does
lose.
that affect? Because it's a domino effect. It's not just you. So how?
But
does
my
That's why I
kid-
said this is like this is a good like way, because everyone on this panel is like coming from a different perspective of it. Like Wes just had his first fucking kid and shit. He's got this whole new perspective on it too. And like
And Wes, you were very.
Yeah,
quick
like
to
what,
answer
like
this.
how,
I'm
like,
very
'cause
curious how people
you've been trying to mix
maneuver.
that lately with
Yeah,
like
I
your
mean,
new,
I've
new
had
son.
to
I don't
cut-
want to dox you. You
I've
have
had
a
to
wonderful
cut the
baby
amount.
boy.
Can I talk? I've had to cut the amount of shows that I'm doing from here on out, because the last 2 years I've done probably close to 50 shows, and I can't do it anymore. And even doing this show this weekend, my wife's been sending me pictures all morning. They've been doing like Easter egg hunting and
Okay.
stuff, and I'm already missing it. But it's been hard, but it's just an adjustment for everybody, I guess. But
I have
yeah. I think we
I've
have.
got all kinds of
Yeah,
questions.
yeah, it's already too like let's. You two have questions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, just very briefly, this concerns interaction with other people at events. A while ago, a friend of mine started a small press. I was doing this thing to kind of get people to come to the table. I did a shell game routine. And, you know, I do, like, I had like a routine that I'd say, you know, like, oh, you got the plot, the setting, you mix them up, you put them back in a different order. And, like, it was really good. It got a lot of people over and stuff. But at the end of the day, I was thinking, I wonder if the people at the adjoining tables want to strangle me? Like, the ones who had to, like, hear that routine,
Doesn't matter.
like,
Who
all
cares?
day.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, is there any protocol regarding that kind of thing? Like, dude, you're just being obnoxious, you know?
No, fuck no. Because I even say to people, like, I know you've already heard me give this pitch all damn day, and I don't fucking care, because this is what I do. So if that's like your deal, and like that's how you work it, then let them be mad that they don't have like their shit worked out. Like, so what, they have to hear it every day. Like,
you
oh.
maybe get them good ideas for next.
Again, and it's also like, don't apologize. Like, that's what
Yeah.
you're doing. Like, you don't have to apologize for
I
it.
think that's the general thing in
Yeah.
all of these panels and all of these events. It's like, stop apologizing. Stop, you know, don't overthink
Yeah,
it
what
too
are we,
much, like-
Canadian?
I mean, I'm British. I apologize
Yeah,
for
yeah.
everything.
All right, you had one more question?
I was just wondering how many shows a year you guys do.
I mean, he's topped everybody, but
Well, I mean, Malfi does a lot of music shows too. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like 30. I'll do like 35 weeks or 40 weeks this year. So it's 52 weeks, and so like most of the year.
But you guys are both in bands and you kind of piggyback on that, which is a whole different.
Yeah, that's
What about the two newer guys?
I've done 7 shows in a year. I mean, last year was my first time like doing like conventions consistently, and this year I'll probably do maybe like 1 or 2 less, like 5 or 6.
Okay.
I think it really depends. Like I was saying earlier, like shows I've done last year, I'm not going to do this year just because they weren't worth the travel, and they weren't worth the amount of sales I've done.
You do learn
and
that.
it's not really necessarily about the sales, but if I'm paying for the hotel and paying for gas, paying for food, like I know that show is not going to be worth all that expense. But then I'll put more money into a bigger show that I can go to. So I think anything more than, personally, I think anything more than 10 is way outside of my reach, but eventually I can do more. But that also depends on, you know, having kids, having pets. I work full time, and you know, it'll probably be less, but I think anywhere from like 5 to 8 a year.
Yeah, I tend to go if I'm invited, which is lovely because you know that there's an engagement there from the start. And then beyond that, like, I'll go to StokerCon every year because I just see all my friends and hang out. It's just awesome. And that's like my big investment per year. Beyond that, I prefer to put my energy into writing. And it does I'm very like outgoing at these events and stuff because I'm kind of pushing myself, but then I find it really draining, and I need a long time to recover. So I'd maybe 3 or 4 a year, like, yeah, and that's enough for me, and I'm happy with that. Like,
All right, well, we're a little over time by now, but thank you everybody for coming out.
Yeah.
Thank you to the
Thanks,
panelists
guys.
for coming out for this. Thank you
guys.
everybody.
Thanks,
Really
Wes.
appreciate it.
Thanks
Yeah,
for
thanks, Wes.
Thanks, Wes.
moderating.
Good job, Wes.
Well done, fellas.
I'm getting out of this sweat.
Trying to, like,
This well.
you know.